Hello, welcome to the gun shop with me, John, and today we're going to be looking at this, the Lee Enfield 410 conversion. This particular one is a Mark III, and it has been converted for 410 for quite some years, and was converted in this country. This is not to be confused with the Ishapur rifles, aka the ones that were converted in India in 1950. This is a homegrown conversion, which is quite nice. Anyway, without further ado, let's come in and look at it. Starting at the back, we have this. A brass heel plate, not the sort of thing you usually see on a sporting shotgun, but it is really very nice. It's a proper piece of history. The stock on this one is walnut stock, and it has been oiled. So it's fresh out of the workshop for that actually. It's something that was in a really fairly nasty lacquer, and for the sake of a little bit of work, it felt the right thing to do to invest in time in this. Seeing as, although it is for sale, it's one of those guns that isn't really for sale, because until I get another one, I feel like I need to keep this in the shop. I feel like I need it in my life. You have a Sling swivel on the back, and obviously in the back of your brass heel plate there is the little pouch there. You can open that up and you can store stuff in there if you want, grease pots, pull-throughs. It's probably not a bad idea to actually keep this in a fairly good order. So yeah, you have your little collar, your buttstock collar there, and on the side it's stamped 1943, which is quite nice. So you've got all your original stampings on here, and all the serial numbers do match, even though it is a converted one, and that doesn't really matter. Obviously, a Lee Enfield action cocks on the push forward instead of on the bolt open. So if you watch this at the back here, you'll end up with it cocked, and you can then let that off by pulling the trigger and letting it forward. You can then recock it like that, so if you do get a misfire, you can give it a second go. Not that that's obviously I'm condoning that from a safety issue, but that's what I would do. All right. So it's lovely. That's a first for starters. I need to stop saying that. The action is a standard 303 action, and as such the bolt comes out like this. If you pull the bolt back to just short of closed, push this lever down, the bolt comes back, bolt comes up, and the bolt will come out. With the bolt out, life is a lot easier. You can actually have a look, certainly, at how good a quality that is. Again, I said the extractors can change slightly between different conversion models. They do benefit from a slight bit of modification, although it's obviously not necessary. Anyway, on the way back in, you just make sure it's aligned with the top. Push it in your hole like that, and then flip your rear sight up, push it down, push that down into where it should be, and then push that forward, like that. And that's as simple as that. You can decock this or push it forward. If you pull the trigger, push the bolt forward and push it down, it is now decocked. So you can carry one in the chamber, very, very safe. All this, the modern fashion for carrying guns that have a cocking as part of the safety is very nice. However, you do have the ability with this to be able to pull that back, as long as it's not wet and slippy. But it is a knurled thing, so you will not likely let go. The safety here is on the off side, and is more of a trigger disengagement than anything else. Obviously there's a mag release, but the mag is welded in place, as many of these are. And with Section 2 law, obviously you can have a fixed magazine, as long as it takes no more than 2 and 1 in the chamber. However, this was originally a 10-shot mag. A, to get them working with your 410 cartridges is quite difficult, and B, you know, you need on a Section 1 to have it A, removable, or B, to take the amount it takes, because, you know, putting a piece of wood in there to block it like the Ishapur rifles shotguns did, it doesn't quite cut the mustard. So a double weld does fix that. I have seen Section 1 ones with a full magazine. However, it takes a lot of work to make them work efficiently and actually feed properly. Apart from that, you can always have a little look when you're buying one of these in the chamber, and you'll soon see what sort of quality of workmanship was like when they converted it. You can have a look in there. Certainly if you take the bolt out and look down into the light, you'll see the quality of the bore, and that's also worth checking on these. You'll see any revels, any pitting, anything like that, and it's probably worth staying away from anything like that. Although a lot of the time now you don't really have the option. As I've said, so you are set up with a standard rear peep sight here. However, you can flick this up, and you have the little adjuster on the side. Depending on which model they converted, and will do slightly differently. Moving on, you have a full wrapped barrel in wood with 1 barrel band, 2 barrel bands, and your foresight there. It's quite a nice little thing, one way or another. It certainly works. The metalwork on this gun we have nothing to do with. It has been polished and then resprayed at some point in the past, which I would call a little bit of a shame. But again, it doesn't really matter. It would be worth redoing it in my head, but financially it really is not. So you learn to live with these little things. Right, and that is about it. The foresight is obviously adjustable, and so you can kind of usually set the rifle up to the bore just about, or the sights up to the bore of the gun just about, but it's not always that easy. You have a front sling swivel, and some of them will come with their original Lee Enfield slings, but you don't obviously have to use those. Anyway, I think we'll both agree that this is an absolutely beautiful looking gun, and although it serves very low practical purpose, oh, yeah, just look at it. Just look at it. It's a shotgun you can own and go and have lots of fun with. Anyway, let's get out of this up close and personal stuff. Operation of this gun goes something like this. The bolt comes up, the bolt comes back. You get your single 410. It's just a snap cap, obviously. You throw it somewhere in there, and because of the design, depending on which gun you've got, they can jam a little bit. So usually helps just to feed them in a little bit. Feed them into your chamber a little bit. Bolt goes forward. Fire. The triggers can be a little heavy, but obviously you can work Lee Enfield triggers to be really nice. Pull that up and pull it back, and out she comes. They don't always eject thus, and say they can be quite fussy depending on which shell you put in and who did the job in the first place. But they are, regardless, absolutely great fun. Just as long as you're not in a rush. Okay, so why do they exist? Well, some years ago, a shotgun licence could be applied for by post, and a firearms licence was much the same. However, they changed that to make a firearms licence a little bit harder to get, aka rifles were harder to get. You needed a reason to own them. As such, the people who owned these, of course they made millions of these, and everybody having to do national service liked them, used them, was familiar with them. So if you owned a rifle, it was quite often one of these for a multitude of purposes. However, for those of them who didn't actually need them, didn't want them, and you could still apply for your shotgun licence by post, it was a lot easier to have these converted to shotgun. As such, you'll find in this country, although there is a lot of 410s, you also get 35 smoothbore, 303 smoothbore, you get all sorts of very weird and wonderful things that we're just trying to get around that law. Obviously now the more common ones you'll see is the 410, and that's that. Alright, being a homegrown product, there have been a lot of people doing the 410 conversions. All they really did was remount the chamber to 410, and then bore out the barrel to 410. So it had a 410 barrel and put a 410 chamber reamer in there. Most of these at the time were done to 2.5 inch, however I've seen some more modern conversions or reconverted or rechambered to 3-inch guns. But yeah, they're a little bit more practical. Especially, you know, with some of the decent 3-inch cartridges, you can actually get a gun that's quite proficient at pest control in 410 now. Again, not to be confused with the Ishapores, which were done on a brass 303 case that have been fire-formed out to 410. Obviously, being a more provincial built gun, a lot of these you can end up with a lot of working issues where barrels aren't aligned properly, where ejectors don't quite pull cartridges out properly, where you don't end up with correct ejection or anything like that, which can be a little bit of a pain in the bum. That said, it's not really the end of the world. You don't own one of these as a practical working shotgun. You own one of these because it's a Lee Enfield that you don't have to have a Section 1 firearms certificate for. It's also really nice that they're not sort of subject to quite the same scrutiny, perhaps, as rifles. The rifles have a real purist following, and if you buy a original, pure-looking one, generally the theme is to try and keep them as original as possible. And it's quite frowned upon to modify or change that in any way. One of these, a shotgun version, doesn't quite have that same, is it stigma, maybe the right word there, around it, and actually you see a lot of people doing their own thing. Stripping, oiling, people who lacquer it in their own way. I've seen a customer spray paint theirs and it was all black. It was quite smart. I've seen a guy put a rail with 10 410 cases down the side, and you know what? Nobody particularly cares because of what it is. I even know a guy who fits a bayonet to his when he shoots clays with it. I'm not really sure why. But people do these things, so that's fine. And so I'd say that you could weigh that in as a good or a bad thing. The real good thing about them is that you can buy one of these on a shotgun certificate and go and have a lot of fun. You're not under the same restrictions as you would if it was on a firearms certificate. Actual quality of shooting depends on the gun. I've shot some of these that are absolutely spot on, and I've shot some of these that are genuinely not particularly accurate. AKA the bore has been misaligned with the barrel, or you just have the sights just don't work. Okay, most of them will therefore shoot a little bit high, by the way, off of the standard sight, but you get used to it pretty quick. The best thing to do if you buy one of these is to go straight out and shoot some paper. Obviously you still have your working rear sight here, and I'm not sure how it would work with slug, but it might. You never know. Actually have some accuracy with slug, and then you might actually be able to use the height that this peep sight gives you, maybe, possibly, if you can get slow on your section 1 and then want to put it through this, instead of just buying yourself a real Lee Enfield. They're a bit of a odd one when it comes to pricing. They don't go for a huge amount of money, although they are fairly rare. They don't come up for sale too often, and when they do, they're not worth a lot. It's one of the strange things in life where actually something there is not very much of doesn't command a higher price. Probably because of what it is, but I think that's something that's strange, and I do value them in my head more perhaps than they are valued for on the market. Again, probably just the patriot in me talking. Anyway, I'm genuinely in love with it. I think they're brilliant. They're so much fun. You know, I shot one of these a few years ago, and me and a friend went out squirrel shooting with it, and we had a whale of a time. We came back out from days walking around with 3 squirrels, but the smile that was on our faces after tramping around the woodland with essentially a Lee Enfield, could be construed as a 303, filled out a lot of childhood desires and childhood memories, I suppose, or however stupid that is. Anyway, they are great fun. They're certainly something that's worth owning. Although they're not the most practical thing in the world, they do look absolutely stunning. I think this is probably one of my favourite rifles of all time in terms of looks. Yeah, I don't have a lot more to say than that. I'm clearly in love. But are you? So that was it. The Lee Enfield converted 410. Hope you enjoyed. Take care, thank you very much, goodbye.